as Dan says, we had this season of preparing for God to move, to do whatever he wanted to do. In one sense, we're always preparing because we're preparing for the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. But there's a sense in which we really needed to prepare. And Dan had this prophetic word about prepare the heart. That's where it all starts, the very posture of our heart. Prepare the hands. Have we got the tools, the equipment we need for God when God moves? And are our hands ready to serve and to give and to bless? And then it was to prepare the land, cultivating an environment for the presence of God to move. Now, a few months ago, when we were in the middle of this, probably moving from heart to hands, we met as leadership, and Alison just shared something she had on her heart. And I said, you've got to bring that. That's got to be part of it. It was kind of a prepare hearts, hands type thing. But she was then ill, and various things have happened, so she wasn't able to do that. So I said to her yesterday, I said, which one is it now? Is it heart, hands, or land? She says, it's all three of them. So we have that to look forward to, but that's where we're at. So I'm going to hand over to Alison now. She's going to come and bring the word of God to us.
Thank you. Just, I use big sheets so I don't have to use my glasses. Then I can look up and look down and it's fine. Otherwise I get lost. So I want to talk a bit about repositioning. It's a new season, new academic year for those of you who got school kids, but it's a new academic year just generally. I haven't got school kids anymore, but I still feel there's something special about moving into September. A time for re-looking at our lives, a time for looking at where we're at and our hearts. So repositioning can look like, in my head, it's like sometimes it's a repositioned body, isn't it? Repositioning. Moving over here, moving one room to another. But I don't want to look at repositioning your body. I want you to reposition your spirit, reposition your heart. We have bodies. We like playing football. We like sleeping, eating, dancing. They cry out for food, water, rest, happiness, sex, all those things. But just now we're going to go, shh, bodies. We're not talking to you this morning. We're going to look at something greater, reposition our spirits. I love C.S. Lewis. He says, you do not have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body. Rethinking about what's most important. It's our soul. So I'm going to look at two Psalms. Well, actually three. But first we're going to start with one of David's Psalms in chapter 27, verse 4. David said one thing, not lots of things, just one, I've asked of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to inquire, to ask, to search in his temple, all the things we don't understand, to inquire in his temple. The sons of Korah wrote another psalm reflecting this, but slightly different. Psalm 84 verse 10 says, a single day in your courts is better than 1,000 anywhere else. I'd rather be a gatekeeper in the house of my God than to live the good life in the homes of the wicked. Do you remember the good life? I love the good life. Sorry, that's come back. It's good life in the homes of the wicked. The psalmist is saying that having a nice house is lovely, but it's not what their deepest desire is. What is your one thing? If you could live your whole life somewhere, where would it be? So first thing is repositioning ourselves as those who dwell in God's presence. Another psalm, in Psalms 84, verse 1 to... it's the same psalm, but just a bit earlier. It starts off, how lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord Almighty. My soul yearns, even faints, for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh cry out for the living God. So first of all, if we're going to want to live in God's presence, what does that look like? What's going to attract us there? What does lovely look like? How lovely is your dwelling place? Perhaps for you it's a sunrise on a mountain. Perhaps for you it's a lovely car designed really beautifully. Perhaps it's reading a book. Perhaps it's a bride's face as she walks down the aisle. Perhaps it's children playing. presence of God is a little bit better than that. And physically, in the Bible and Revelation, it talks about rainbows and fires and oceans and rushing water and harps and trumpets and wind roaring and singing and incense. All of our senses tingling with this presence of God. But actually, it's more even than that. It's gazing on the beauty of the Lord. It's all about him. Imagine looking around the world, all the things that we see that are sources of goodness, all the food that you eat, the clothes, all the love that you have with people, all the forgiveness, kindness, generosity, all that's goodness from God. We see it in a tiny bit, but imagine going to the source. Imagine going to the source of purity, the source of love, the source of goodness, the source of glory, the source of everything that's beautiful and good in our life. Imagine going to where Jesus is, the fullness of his existence, going to see the hands that threw the stars in space, going to see the one that raised the dead, going to see his charisma. I mean, crikey, he must be so full of life and energy, all in one space with unveiled faces, seeing him face to face, the King of Kings, the Ancient of Days, the decades of glory and power, the one who sees all and loves all and forgives all, the source of kindness and joy and patience. Incredible. Imagine seeing that face to face. It says in Corinthians that we only see like a mirror, but one day we will see face to face. But God invites us there now. He says, come to me. It's interesting, in a lot of worship, we always ask God to come to us. Say, you're welcome here, and there's nothing wrong with that. Say, come and change our lives. But actually, God gives you the biggest invitation. And he says, come into my throne room. Come into my presence. Come into where everything is, where it's all there. C.S. Lewis says, even if you struggle imagining the fullness of God in one space and seeing him face to face, do the opposite. Imagine a place without the presence of God, without any goodness or kindness, without any blessings, without any food, without family, without relationships. Imagine a place absent of God. And then switch it round. Imagine a place full of God. His presence, you're invited there. He's made a way. Incredible. What if we made that our default place to live from? What if we decided to live in the presence of God from the moment we woke up to the time we went to bed? What if we ate in the presence of God, watched TV in the presence of God, walked with him in the presence of God, became so aware of his face and his glory? What would that look like? Rather than having quiet times where we fit 10 minutes here to walk into the presence and then we seem to disappear again. What if being with him became so enthralling and so encapturing, it would be hard to actually drag us away from it? How much we would change. You can't see God face to face and not change. Let's reposition ourselves. Reposition ourselves to one who yearn for God. It says, my soul waits to inquire at his temple gates. There's times when we wait for Christmas, wait for summer holidays. But waiting is so active and so enthralling. And when we cry out to him, it says, my soul cries out to God. It's not an English cry out. It's a guttural cry out. It's not a self-aware, distracted, embarrassed cry out. It really is a cry from your heart. We are all in on this one. It says in Revelation, the church in Laodicea, we're neither hot nor cold. They didn't do the guttural cry. It was like, yeah, well, whatever, when I'm ready. And God actually says, you're so neither hot nor cold, so I'll actually spit you out of my mouth until you decide what you want to be. Because those foods are slightly like, it's like a beer that's not quite cold. It's a little bit, you just don't want to drink it, do you? It says one thing. When I've been meditating on this, God keeps coming back to me. This word is not just for today. Let it roll around your life. Let it roll around your heart. Because God's asking us, what's the one thing we want to do with our lives? And he kept saying, if you're saying you'd like to spend a single day, you'd rather spend a single day in my presence than 1,000 elsewhere, what are your 1,000 elsewheres? So he didn't say they're bad 1,000 elsewheres. There might be time with your children. Time in your family. It might be holiday. It might be on the beach, paddling in the water. Where else would you like to spend 1,000 days? Beautiful days. Days that make you happy. Days that kind of half fulfill you. Would you prepare to sacrifice all of that for one day in his presence? God keeps asking me that, and I haven't still got the answer to that. So I'm asking you that so that you can mull that around in your head. Big, big question. There's lots of places I'd like to be. Where is your elsewhere? There's a passage in the Bible that says in Ezekiel, the Israelites tried to worship both the things they liked and God. And Ezekiel 43, it says that he actually went up into the heavens and the glories and saw God. And God spoke to him about where his temple was. The Israelites had built right next to them. It says even to the doorposts were touching the doorposts, the walls were touching the walls. There was just one more presence of God and the things they liked to worship. And they thought they could worship both. And this passage in Ezekiel kind of says, God says, you can't defile my holy presence, my glory, everything that I stand for, by putting everything that you like next to it and trying to worship both of them. It doesn't work. You defile his name. We need to choose what our one thing is. We need to only have one doorway, one worship place. Just because it's good and it's God-given doesn't mean it should go before God. Anything we worship more than God, we need to move those things out the way. And it says, one day, I'd rather be a doorkeeper in your house than 1,000 days elsewhere. So it's not even you're in a prime position. You're not in the choir. You're not on the stage leading worship. This one day, you're just a doorkeeper at the back of the room where God's presence dwells. I can't imagine that, can you? A doorkeeper. The doorkeeper they're talking about, they're referring to, what did they used to do? So in the temple, they'd open and shut the doors, obviously. Well, it was a veil-y thing rather than actual. They kept the place sacred and holy. So obviously they wouldn't let people, drunkards in. They wouldn't let people who weren't dressed appropriately, living well. They would be the first port of call for help and advice, help with the sacrifices. They would actually collect the tithes and the sacrifices. They were stewards of all the things that people brought in. Made sure nothing was stolen. They stood for hours on end, day and night. It wasn't a glamorous job. Probably a lot of blood dripping with the sacrifices and everything. And no one asked them how they were doing. They just served. So we've done repositioning in God's presence, repositioning of yearning, repositioning of servitude. Sometimes we make God's place our place for ourselves. So we can ask each other, how was worship for you? It's like worship's not meant to be for you. Did you like this song? This song wasn't for you. This song was for God. How was your time together with everybody? How was your time? This time is building up his church for him. It's not for us. And being placed of servitude means that we do everything for him. Unnamed, unnoticed. Now, the only servants I know are in Downton Abbey. I don't know if anybody's watched Downton Abbey. There's servants in the house. We know their names. We know their stories. They have nice bedrooms. They all eat together on a big banquet table. But in the Bible, the servants had no names. Abraham's servant, who sent for a bride for Isaac, we don't know. The servant who helped Naaman go and get washed in the water, who was she? We don't know her name. Servants aren't named. They just do the job because they love God. They have their lives laid down. There's a verse in the Bible that says, "Pierce my ear, O Lord my God." You choose to be marked for him, lay your life down and do as he asks. It's a life of obedience. It's almost we choose to be his servant, but then after that our choices go. And we come with empty hands. You can't serve with your hands full, with your PlayStation in your hand or your phone in your hand, or I'll go and get your glass of water. Oh no, it's a bit difficult. You have to come to God with empty, uncluttered hands, with your life laid down. Simple, focused on him. Sometimes we clutter our lives with too many things. Watchful and ready. Servants are watchful and ready. There's a lovely verse in Psalm 123 verse 2. It says, "As the eyes of the slave or servant look to their master, and as the eyes of a female slave look to the hands of a mistress, so our eyes look to you, Lord our God." We're so busy looking at him rather than watching what we want to do. We're so busy focused on him that when he lifts his hands, we're there, we're ready. What do you want, God? What do you want? What are you asking me to do now? When God sneezes, not that God does sneeze, because obviously he doesn't get any viruses or hay fever. When God sneezes, we're there as servants. Would you like a tissue, God? What would you like us to do? How can we serve you? When God sees something out in the community, we're there ready. God's heart starts crying. His tears are falling. What do you want us to do, God? How would you like us to act in this situation? We're ready there with our hands empty, and God says, I just would like you to do this. Pray for that person. Feed that person. Give that person a home. We're ready as servants to be fast. We're watchful and ready. We're devoted to his picture, the master's dream. The last one is repositioning on the threshold. As if you're a doorkeeper, you're at the threshold, a place where people go in and out. First thing you notice, there is an in and an out. It doesn't merge all into one. People are in God's presence, and there's a place where you can leave God's presence. There's a guy called Phinehas in the Old Testament. He was a grandson of Aaron, and he was a gatekeeper. And he, at the time, was among the Israelites, and they were sinning. They were being really bad. And this couple just waltzed into the camp where the presence of God was. This adulterous couple with somebody he shouldn't have been with. And Phinehas just went. I won't tell you what he did. You'll have to read it yourself, because the children are here. He went and he was drastic. Honestly, he was fiercely drastic. And it says he was zealous for the honour of his God. Let us be so zealous for the honour and holiness of our God that we take drastic action if we see anything that isn't right in the presence of God. That we take drastic action and we help and we say, this isn't right here. It's not okay. Repositioned on the threshold because the gatekeepers honoured the tithes. And I don't know why God's asked me to put it. I only put this in this morning. But he says it's really important to honour the gifts to God. And that doesn't just mean sacrifices of worship from our heart. It actually does mean physical tithe as well. Tithes are important to God's heart. How we reposition our threshold? For those people who are coming in. People will be coming in and coming out if we're gatekeepers. If we're in, if they're coming in, we're going to open our arms wide and say, come in. But the focus isn't on us, is it? Come in. Come and see the Lord Almighty. Come and see God who can help you and save you. We are those who give truth for people who are coming in, those who don't understand. It's not easy to enter God's presence if you don't understand who he is or what he's done for you. So we're the truth bearers who go out and tell people, this is how you enter God's presence. This is what God is like. Come in and meet him face to face. We're hands that hold space. So we hold spaces for those people who don't understand what God is like and don't know how to see him face to face. So we can love them, we can bring the kingdom into our homes. We can bring the kingdom into our lives. We're holding space for people ready for when they really can see God face to face, when they're ready. And in that place, we're hands that help, that pick up, that comfort, that wipe tears away, that cook and care, bring a cup of tea, shop. In all those spaces, that's what we're doing. Because ultimately, when people see God face to face, he wipes their tears away and he cares for them. So we then become redundant. But at times, we hold space for people. Those that come in, what about those that go out? There's movement both ways. I don't know how busy it is in the presence of God, how much it's like going. I don't know how much we'd have to, I don't know. But anyway, those that are going out, hands that pray. That's what we're doing this morning, hands that pray. Hands that lift up each other. Hands that bless. Hands that anoint. Not only do we pray for those that are going out, so they will be successful as they hold space, while they bring the message, while they bring other people into God's presence. We go out too. We're those that go out into the land, that we make the land ready. We sow the seed of truth. We hold space for people. We share love. So we're gatekeepers and we're those that go in and out. So it's repositioning our hearts to in presence of God. Repositioning our hearts that we are full of zeal and we wait. Repositioning our hearts to be servants and obedience and have one focus. Reposition on a threshold. We're going to finish, because I want this all to be about focusing on him, in his presence, on a song about waiting. And as we sing this song, it starts a little bit, it says, in the darkness I wait for you. Sometimes it is in the darkness, but I want this song to be focused on him and not us, not our dark place. I want it to be focused on his presence. And I want you to respond at this season that you say to him, yeah, I want to reposition myself. Not everybody is going to want to do this because it's costly to become a servant, to want him. What's your one thing? Even if that's the only question, you come and say, what's the one thing I want? Is it one day with you, or is it 1,000 elsewhere, somewhere else that's happy? So I'm going to pray for you first, and then I'd like you to just bow your heads with this song, and I just would like you to have some God time and just wait for him in his presence, imagining that you before the throne room, before him, and just speak to him, or just spend time just yearning for him. One thing have I asked of the Lord, that I will seek after you with all my heart and all my strength, that I may dwell in your house, O Lord, all the days of my life, to gaze upon your beauty and to inquire in your temple, that I may desire a single day in your courts, convinced it's better than 1,000 anywhere else. I know your love is better than life itself. I would rather be a gatekeeper in your house, O God, than live the good life in homes of earthly priorities and self-focus. For as my eyes look to you, I will wait for you. I will yearn for you, and I long to reposition myself to live a life in your presence with my eyes fixed on you.